Adrian Mays, AI Genius, Project 2025 900-page mandate for leadership, live part 5 on Friday after Independence Day. Your president of CCC Because We Care Foundation, Adrian Mays, and captain of the Detroit ChatGPT Revolution. I have to say thank you to Taraji P. Henson. Taraji P. Henson slams Project 2025 on the BET Awards 2 days ago. And that's what actually enlightened the BET Awards 2024. Taraji P. Henson brought the actual light and said Project 2025 plan is not a game. Project 2025 began trending on Google Moments after actress Taraji P. Henson urged guests at the 2024 BET Awards to look it up, educate themselves on it, and vote. I'm telling y'all better show up and show out. I'm being serious now, Henson said, as she looked directly into the camera in the middle of the show on June 30th. It's not just about presidential election, you guys. It's time for us to play chess, not checkers. Project 2025, known as the Presidential Transition Project, is a conglomerate of conservative policy proposals, potential picks to fill positions for the next administration and move in the event that a Republican, which would be Donald J. Trump, is elected president in November. It was put together in 2022 by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative nonprofit, in order to pave the way for an effective conservative administration. The project is based on 4 pillars: a policy agenda, personnel database, training, and a 180-day playbook. The Project 2025 plan is not a game. Look it up, Henson said during her impassioned speech. She also criticized the recent set of U.S. House bills, including the defense bill that would automatically register men between a certain age for the draft and the suggested update that would include women. She asked the crowd if they knew it was now a crime to be homeless, referring to the U.S. Supreme Court's recent ruling allowing cities to punish people for sleeping outside. I'm not just trying to scare us, I'm trying to inform us, Henson continued. I'm trying to be mad, talking to the mad people who don't want to vote. You're going to be mad about a lot of things if you don't vote. So, in regards to the where and the how this attention even came from, honestly, I have to say thank you to Taraji Henson. So Project 2025, again, is a trending term, and that's another thing that you look forward to. Now, I'm here in Detroit, Michigan. What up, though? And so the search interest is about it is 79, but it's the highest in West Virginia, second in Arkansas, Kentucky, Indiana, and Maine. What this means is the search terms here that are abysmal: Truth Social, Joy Reid, John McSenty, Project 2025, Social Security benefits, Donald Trump, Project 2025, Trump and Project 2025, Trump Project 2025, Trump 2025, Truth Social topic, Joy Reid, American journalist and television, John McGinty, former director of the White House, Truth topic, no fault divorce topics, and then autocracy form of government. So what this means, guys, is before I jump right into the Project 2025, when you're actually looking at digital real estate and see what's trending, like a few months ago when Club Shay Shay, when Cat Williams was trending, when he actually made a comment on Club Shay Shay. So same thing with Taraji P. Henson. She made a comment on the BET Awards, and it piqued my interest, which allowed me to go to the actual social media to find out what was going on. So Project 2025 is a 900-page mandate for leadership, and reading it live, part 5 here on as a random acts of kindness. As again, it was crazy, actually had a couple of parts today, had part 3 and part 4 earlier today. So go check out that part as well. And I'm going to go as long as possible today again before I take another break. I know I have to take one around 9 p.m., but we're going to go as long as possible to read. But on the last break, it was really heartwarming to see, you go in for one reason, and the reason of even reading this as, again, in Michigan, it being one of the highest illiteracy locations in the world, or like in the country, excuse me, in the world, in the country, with 47%, and even in Detroit being 47%, but 16% in the state of Michigan. And with those statistics, what that tells you with a 900-page document, most of Detroit, half of Detroit won't read it. And so it might be a chance if I break this down into, again, reading this live and however long it takes, it's going to take. And then the next segment is going to be breaking it down into 60-second segments and posting that onto a YouTube channel for Random Acts of Kindness 2024. Because the great thing is, if you do want to listen to it, if you do want to understand it, it might not be for you. But if you do want to understand what you are about to vote for in November, or getting ready to, or not getting ready to, if we walk into a presidency with Donald Trump, then this is going to be an audible version that is not even found anywhere. I went to go look for it after I saw the BET Awards. I was like, a couple of days ago, seriously, because it aired on the BET Awards, aired June 30th. And so when I actually got the idea, I was like, okay, so, and then I tried to go find it somewhere because again, everybody wants to find a cheap book, but there isn't one. So again, once I put it out there, didn't find a cheap book, and I was like, ocean strategy. So when you have an ocean strategy, which means back 50 Cent read his book live when I first started this digital marketing journey. He read this book live and he was able to gain the interest of something that matters. This matters, and this is something that is going to be life-changing one way or another. Because again, if these principles are adopted and we don't read it, and you're listening to media and then social media and all the other people that are all into your ear, I'm going to give it to you uncut, unbiased, ingenuine. Adriane Mays is not going to be giving you any type of political input. I'm going to read what's on the paper. So what that's going to do is first give you the ingenuity of being able to be a part of the conversation. So I'm going to jump right into it as we are currently on page, so I can't be in a part of the conversation if I don't read it, right? So I thank Taraji P. Henson for putting it in front of the attention, because when you're dealing with wealth creation and strategies, you want to provide someone with the best possible strategies, but not having read this document is putting people not in the best situation. I need to have this information. So thank you, Taraji P. Henson. If you want to do a one-on-one to help get people voting, give me a call. Let's do it. So anyway, let's get back to reading. So right now we're on Shaping the Future, page 226 of 922, Department of State, or on page 193 if you're looking at the printout, 2025 Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership. So we're starting with Shaping the Future, page 226 out of 922. Development of a grand foreign policy strategy is key to the next administration's success, but without addressing structural and related issues of the State Department, this strategy will be at risk. The Hart-Rudman Commission called for a significant restructuring of the State Department significantly and foreign assistance programs generally, stating that funding increases could only be justified if there was greater confidence that institutions would use their funding effectively. Sadly, the exact opposite had occurred. The State Department has metasized in structure and resources, but neither the function of the department nor the use of taxpayer dollars has improved. The next administration can take steps to remedy these deficiencies. The State Department's greatest problem is certainly not an absence of resources. As noted, the department boasts tens of thousands of employees and billions of dollars of funding, including significant amounts of discretionary funding. It also exists among a broader array of federal agencies that are duplicative, particularly when it comes to the provision of direct and indirect foreign assistance. Realistically meaningful reform, the State Department will require significant streamlining. Below are some key structural and operational recommendations that will be essential for the next administration's success and which will lay crucial foundation for other necessary reforms. Develop a reorganization strategy. Despite periodic attempts by previous administrations, including the Trump administration, to more than cosmetic changes to the State Department, its structure has remained largely unchanged since the 20th century. The State Department will better serve future administrations, regardless of party, if it were to be meaningful, streamlined. The next administration should develop a complex hypothetical reorganization of the department, one which would tighten accountability to political leadership, reduce overhead, eliminate redundancy, waste fewer taxpayer resources, and recommend additional personnel related changes for improvement of function. Such reorganization could be creative, but also carefully review specific structure related problems that have been documented over the years. This reorganization effort wouldn't necessarily assess what office closures can be carried out with and without congressional approval. Timelines for action on these fronts should be developed accordingly, but speed should be a priority. Consolidate foreign assistance authorities. Foreign assistance is a critical foreign policy tool that is too often disconnected from the federal government's practice of foreign policy. Bureaucrats spend significant energy resisting the use of non-emergency foreign assistance to leverage positive results for the United States, even though it is a perfectly reasonable proposition. The coordination of foreign assistance dollars is also difficult because the foreign assistance budget and foreign loan issuance authorities are divided across numerous cabinet departments, smaller agencies, and other offices. The next administration should take steps to ensure that future foreign assistance clearly and unambiguously supports the president's foreign policy agenda. For example, the next administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is technically subordinate to the State Department, should be authorized to take on the additional role of Director of Foreign Assistance with the rank of Deputy Secretary and oversee all foreign assistance. This role, which existed briefly during the George W. Bush administration, before it was eliminated by the Obama administration, would empower the dual-headed official to better to better align and coordinate with the manifold foreign assistance programs across the federal government. The next administration should also evaluate whether these multiple sources of foreign assistance are in the national interest and, if not, develop a plan to consolidate foreign assistance authorities. Make public diplomacy and international broadcasting serve American interests. A key part of U.S. foreign policy is the ability to communicate with not only governments, but with the peoples of the world. Indeed, in some ways, communicating directly with the public is more important than communicating with governments, particularly in times of governmental conflict or disagreement. Public diplomacy has historically been and remains vital to American foreign policy success. Unfortunately, U.S. public diplomacy, which largely relies on taxpayer-funded international broadcasting outlets, has been deeply ineffective in recent years. The U.S. government's first foray into international broadcasting started with the Voice of America radio broadcast in 1942, which was intended as a tool to communicate directly with the people of Europe during World War II. During the next half century, America's international broadcasting efforts both expanded and increased in sophistication as the United States shifted out of its hot war in Europe and into the Cold War with the Soviet Union. U.S. international broadcasting prowess and the confidence willingness to communicate the correctness of American ideals in the face of global resistance arguably hit at its peak near the conclusion of the Cold War in the late 1980s. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the subsequent collapse of Soviet and Eastern Bloc communism, factors including the false appeal of a so-called peace dividend triggered a slide in the U.S. ability to communicate a pro-freedom message to the rest of the world and its commitment to do so. Ironically, this slide accompanied the rise of the internet and mobile phone technologies, which arguably facilitated the most significant revolution in human communication since the invention of the printing press. The United States must reassert its public diplomacy obligations by restoring to its international broadcasting infrastructure as part of the broader U.S. foreign policy framework, consolidating broadcasting resources and recommitting to people focused and pro freedom messaging and content. Engage in cyber diplomacy. Cyberspace has become an arena for competition between the US and nations that seek and export digital authoritarianism. Okay. Cyberspace protection is critical to national security and deserving of commensurate diplomatic resources, defined as the use of diplomatic tools to address issues arising in and through cyberspace. Cyber diplomacy is a key part of the US government's toolkit for preventing and addressing cyber threats. The model for cyberspace that the US espouses is based on democracy and freedom of information. It is an open, interoperable, secure, reliable, market drive domain that reflects democratic values and protects privacy. Russia and China, meanwhile, are authoritarian regimes that use the internet to limit public opposition and control information. They have created technological tools to enforce dominance over their peoples, and at the UN and international organizations dealing with cyberspace, they strive to push standards that assist their totalitarian efforts and undermine Western nations. Simultaneously, Russia, China, and lesser adversaries exploit the more open networks of countries like the US to undermine democracy through disinformation and propaganda. They have attempted to influence US elections, enabled or encouraged actors to exploit cyber vulnerabilities to commit theft or real or intellectual property, and have challenged US governmental, military, and critical infrastructure networks with targeted malware. In short, the cyberspace era has gradually evolved from one of exploration, innovation, incorporation to one that retains these features, but is also marked by aggressive competition and persistent threats. To meet this reality, the State Department must move beyond its traditional model of attempting to establish non-binding, informal world standards of acceptable cyberspace behavior. The State Department should work with allies to establish a clear framework of enforceable norms for actions in cyberspace, moving beyond the voluntary norms of the United Nations group of governmental experts. The State Department should also assist the Department of Defense to go on offense against adversaries. Deterrence as a strategic approach has not stemmed the onslaught of cyber aggression below the level of armed conflict. The traditional US defensive approach, based on deterrence followed by reaction to crossed red lines, is no longer effective. Adversaries can evade this strategy through multiple tactical lines of action below the level of armed conflict, and such actions have a cumulative strategic effect. The State Department's role should be to work with allies and engage with adversaries when necessary to draw clear lines of unacceptable conduct. Global financial infrastructure, nuclear controls, and public health are particularly important areas in which consensus may even be found across ideological lines. These mission essential institutional initiatives should be joined with others to establish a presidentially directed and durable US foreign policy. Conclusion: the next conservative president has the opportunity and the duty to restructure the creation and execution of US foreign policy so that it is focused on his or her vision for the nation's role in the world. The policy ideas and reform recommendations outlined in this chapter provide guidance about how the State Department can contribute to this objective. In the main, this chapter refocuses attention away from the special interest and social experiments that are used in some quarters to capture US foreign policies. The ideas and recommendations herein are premised on the belief that a rigorous adherence to the national interest is the most enduring foundation for US grand strategy in the 21st century. So that's page 230. Yay, look at us making progress. Yay. We got to keep going, going. We just got to keep going. We're going to get to page 922 at some point. Ha ha. So let's just keep going. We just know we're not going to stop. This is not a break time. This is just going through the end notes. And so then you get to chapter 7. Let me get a drink of Burners. What up, though, Burners? No breaks. We must finish. Chapter 7, Intelligence Community. Dustin J. Carmack. Mission statement. To arm a future incoming conservative president with the knowledge and tools necessary to fortify the United States intelligence community, to defend against all foreign enemies and ensure the security and prosperity of our sovereign nation, devoid of all political motivations, and to maintain constitutional civil liberties. Overview. The United States intelligence community, IC, is a vast, intricate bureaucracy spread throughout 18 independent and cabinet sub-agencies. According to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, the IC's mission is to collect, analyze, and deliver foreign intelligence and counterintelligence information to America's leaders so they can make sound decisions to protect our country. An incoming conservative president needs to use these intelligent authorities aggressively to anticipate and thwart our adversaries, including Russia, Iran, North Korea, and especially China, while maintaining counterterrorism tools that have demonstrated their effectiveness. This means empowering the right personnel to manage, build, and effectively execute actions dispersed throughout the IC to deliver intelligence in an ever-challenging world. It also means removing redundancies, mission creep, and IC infighting that could prevent these collection tools from providing objective, apolitical, and empirically backed intelligence to the IC's premier customer, the President of the United States. Today, as Abraham Lincoln famously said, the occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. We must think anew and think and act anew. The intelligence community maintains an incredible capacity to achieve its mission, but both the IC and the somewhat antiquated infrastructure that supports it often place too high a priority on yesterday's threats and mythologies instead of trying to identify possible future threats or the mythologies that might be needed to combat them. The IC also often spends too much time overcorrecting for past mistakes. The unintended consequences include hesitancy, group thinking, and an overly cautious approach that allows personal incentives to drive preset courses. The IC must be perceived as a depoliticized protector of America's civil rights and security. The American people are understandably frustrated by the fact that those who abuse power are rarely held to account for their actions. This must change, beginning with leadership that is both committed to ensuring that these agencies faithfully execute the laws of the land under the Constitution and resolve to punish and remove any officials who have abused the public trust. The IC must also start to look forward, not backward. A concerted, disciplined, leadership-led initiative must be undertaken to refocus and shift IC prioritization, funding, and authorities to new and emerging threats, technologies, and methodologies if the United States is to prevail against its global adversaries. Unfortunately, America's major strategic threat is a nation-state peer and possibly ahead of the US in strategic areas. An incoming president must understand that today's intelligence competition could well require analyzing technologies the US does not have or compartmentalizing certain information as was done during the Cold War because of intelligence penetration. A future president's ability to drive the resources needed to defeat another nation state giant should therefore be the focus of near-term IC reforms. Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI. The ODNI was established in the aftermath of the attacks on 9/11 and intelligence failures leading up to the 2003 US war in Iraq. The office and its functions stem from authorities established under executive orders promulgated by President George W. Bush in 2004, followed by statutory authorizations in the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004, IRTPA. Proponents of an ODNI hope to establish reforms similarly to the Goldwater-Nichols Department of Defense, DoD, reforms of the 1980s, which identified recurring problems within DoD's command and control architecture and led to unified combatant commands with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as the senior ranking member of the armed forces and principal military advisor to the president. The ODNI was envisioned as a small but powerful IC coordinating agency led by a director of national intelligence, DNI. As the president's principal intelligence advisor, the DNI would lead and provide oversight of the president's intelligence authorities while wielding a cudgel, budget, and appointments. Authorities to break institutional silos and that had caused past intelligence integration failures. Originally envisioned by the 9/11 Commission as a strengthened authoritative position, the final congressionally negotiated product signed by President Bush has led to ambiguous and vague authorities that are dependent on who is selected as DNI and Central Intelligence Agency, CIA director, and their level of support from the White House and National Security Council, NSC. 9/11 Commission Executive Director Philip Zachow warned in a 2004 hearing that creating a new agency lacking any existing institutional base will require authorities at least as strong as those we have proposed, or else it would create a bureaucratic fifth wheel that will make the present situation even worse. The ODNI has become that bureaucratic fifth wheel about which Zachow warned. For example, under the Bush administration's initial legislative proposal, the CIA director would have been under the authority, direction, and control of the DNI and no longer the head of an autonomous agency. Additional mechanisms envision full budget authority for the DNI, including within DoD's intelligence components, as opposed to coordinating authority. Through arduous sausage making and relatively quick negotiations, lawmakers produced statutorily vague authorities that traded away the DNI's ability to direct budgetary authority across the entire IC, including DoD, and left the CIA, a subordinate but independent agency, with duties to report to the DNI without explicit direct authority. These statutory developments were what led President Bush's first choice to serve as DNI, Robert Gates, to turn down the position. In discussions with the White House over the post, Gates noted that the legislation weakened the leadership of the community, and that instead of a stronger person, you ended up with a weaker person because the DNI had no troops and no additional powers, really on the budget hiring and firing. Gates noted that the success will require the president to make explicit publicly that the DNI is the head of the intelligence community, not some budgeter or coordinator, and that the position's only prayer of success is for the president to say plainly how he sees the job. Without his explicit mandate, the endeavor is doomed to fail. One of the two DNIs confirmed by the Senate during the Trump administration, John Ratcliffe, acknowledged that Gates' theoretical concerns became the practical reality that he inherited. Prior DNIs were the head of the IC only on paper and were routinely accustomed to yielding IC actions and decisions to the preferences of the CIA and other agencies. My ability to begin reversing that capitalization was accomplished solely because President Trump made it repeatedly clear to the entire national security apparatus that he expected all intelligence matters to go through the DNI. To help further the legislative intent behind IRTPA, DNI Radcliffe advised during the transition of incoming Biden, DNI Avril Haines, that the DNI should be the only cabinet level intelligence official. While his recommendations was adopted and has corrected the previously allowed imbalance by making the DNI the only cabinet official and head of the IC at the table, the ODNI's effectiveness and direction leave much to be desired. A conservative president must decide how to empower an individual to oversee and manage the intelligence community effectively. To be successful, the DNI and ODNI must be able to lead the IC and implement the president's intelligence priorities. This includes being able to exercise both budget and personnel authority and being able to rely on timely, useful feedback from subordinate components of the IC, many of which are located within other cabinet agencies. The ODNI needs to direct and not replicate in-house the other IC agencies' analytic, operational, and management functions. Considerations like mismanagement of human resources, joint duty assignments, and accelerated growth in the senior personnel can cause a president to dictate to his incoming DNI a desire to slash redundant positions and expenditures while simultaneously giving the DNI the authority to drive necessary changes through the IC to deal with a nation's most compelling threats, including those emanating from China. As John Radcliffe has noted, these are essential to the DNI have the abilities and authorities to effectively direct, coordinate, and tackle the immense national security challenges ahead for the intelligence community as intended under IRTPA. Otherwise, other cabinet and subordinate IC agencies will continue to regard the ODNI as an annoyance and not as a positive contributor to the National Intelligence Program NIP budget. They will continue to work around or circumvent ODNI leadership decisions with appropriators and the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, or seek to wait out an administration or DNI to prevent a policy or intelligence priority from reaching fruition. Intelligence and interagency coordination has improved significantly since 9/11. Nonetheless, interagency rivalries and festering issues continue to cause duplication of effort on intelligence analysis and technology purchases, as well as overclassification, ever increasing compartmentalization. Additional issues, including the abuse of mandated onboarding, approval, and reciprocity timeliness by some agencies, recruitment and retention failures, and a lack of will to remove underperforming or timely adjudicate the misconduct of senior managers and other employees. Finally, future IC leadership must address the widely promoted woke culture that has spread throughout the federal government, with identity politics and social justice advocacy replacing such traditional American values as patriotism, colorblindness, and even workplace competence. Page 204 on the download and 237 out of 932 in the PDF. Executive Order 12333. IRTPA was passed in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks against the homeland. It was intended to improve the sharing of information among the elements of the IC, recognizing that the nature of threats we now face blurs the lines between foreign and domestic intelligence in detecting and countering national security threats against the homeland. An equally important objective in passing the most significant intelligence reforms since the National Security Act of 1947 was creation of the position of DNI, charged with assuming two of the three principal roles and formerly belonged to the Director of Central Intelligence, DCI, serving as principal intelligence advisor to the president and leading the IC as an enterprise. Nearly 2 decades later, the DNI's record of effectiveness is improving the sharing of information and operating the IC as an enterprise is mixed. Implementation of the DNI's roles as leaders of the IC and principal intelligence advisor to the president has been challenging. However, despite flaws in the legislation and intelligence agencies, bureaucratic jockeying that undermine the DNI, it is impossible to know what would emerge if Congress were to revisit the act. Seeking a legislative solution, therefore, might carry with it more risks than benefits. Instead, an incoming conservative president's immediate focus should be on modifying Executive Order 12333, the president's direction for implementing IRTPA. Executive Order 12333 was amended on July 30th, 2008 by President George W. Bush. The revisions were aligned with IRTPA with significant emphasis on having the IC address the threats to the homeland from international terrorism and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. There is scant mention of cyber threats and the evolving national security challenges posed by China, Russia, and other U.S. adversaries. By extension, the revised order fell short of stipulation how the DNI would execute his authority to organize the IC in a manner that improves the delivery of timely intelligence to a wide array of customers. Executive Order 12333 should be amended to take account of the changing landscape of threats and improve the functional aspects of America's intelligence enterprise. To that end, the revised order should address the threats to the United States and its allies in cyberspace. These threats range from cyber warfare to information operations. The amended order should clearly delineate the roles and responsibilities of the various U.S. government cyber missions, including the recently created National Cyber Director's Office and power centers at the NSC, while protecting the privacy and civil liberties of U.S. citizens. Under the DNI's direction, the cyber mission should explicitly identify how information in the cyber domain will be shared promptly with the warfighters, from law enforcement agencies to the broader IC and state, local, and tribal elements. The order should consider stipulating what to do with DoD cyber agencies, most notably the NSA, in terms of strategic, for example, the president and the DNI, versus tactical support, for example, support for the warfighter, in conjunction with ongoing congressionally mandated reviews of the future dual-headed relationship. Enhance the DNI's role is overseeing execution of the National Intelligence Program budget under the president's authority. This should be done in a manner that is consistent with Congress's intent as embodied in IRTPA. Under the executive order as written today, the DNI shall oversee and direct the implementation of the National Intelligence Program. In practice, the DNI's authority to oversee execution of the IC's budget explains constrained by an inability to address changing intelligence priorities and mandate the implementation of appropriated NIP funding to higher intelligence priorities. The DNI should have the president's direction to address emerging but catastrophic threats, such as those posed by bioweapons, clarifying how much budget authority the DNI has in conjunction within the limits of congressional appropriations, with OMB and IC member cabinet officials to move around money and personnel is crucial, but positions will not always be fungible. It will probably be necessary to hold IC leadership accountable at intransigent agencies and to restructure areas through executive orders in close conjunction with OMB as needed. Clarify the DNI's role as leader of the IC as an enterprise in building the IC's capabilities around its open source collection and analytic missions. The exponential growth in open source information, often called OSINT, is not disputed. In the IC, the use of publicly available information, notwithstanding the authorities within IRTPA, for the DNI to manage OSINT remains disaggregated. The explosion of private sector intelligence products and expertise should signal to IC leadership that duplicative result efforts are unnecessary and that limited resources should be focused on problematic collection tasks. The IC should avoid duplication of what is already being done well in the private sector and focus instead on complex questions that cannot be answered by conventional and frequency increasing numbers of commercial tools and capabilities. If necessary, for lack of results from the National Open Source Committee, the DNI should appoint the Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, PDD&I, as chairman to prioritize and promote accountability for the IC's 18 agencies toward this effort. Prioritize security clearance reform. Security clearance reform has made significant progress under Trusted Workforce 2.0, a government-wide background investigation reform that was implemented beginning in 2018 with the goal of creating one system with reciprocity across organizations. This included allowing movement from periodic and reinvestigations toward a continuous vetting program with automated records checks, adjudication of flags, the mitigation of personnel security situations before they become a larger problem, or the suspension or revocation of clearances. However, human resources onboarding operations in major agencies such as the CIA, FBI, and NSA remain to be resolved. As executive agency for security clearances, the DNI must require results from agencies that resist implementation, enforce the 48-hour reciprocity guidance, and target human resources operations that fail to attract and expediently onboard qualified personnel. Additionally, carrots and sticks from executive order reform language, including moving the Security Services Directorate from NCSC to ODNI with elevated status, may be necessary. It is unacceptable for agencies to hinder opportunities for cross-agency assignments, use public-private partnerships inefficiently because of constraints on the transferability of security clearances, and lose future talent because of extraordinary delays in back-end operations. Proper vetting to speed the onboarding of personnel with much needed expertise is vital to the IC's future. Ensure the DNI's authority. The DNI's authority should be similar to an orchestra with conductors. An incoming conservative president will appoint whomever he chooses as DNI, but there should be agreement between the incoming DNI and president with advice and counsel for the Presidential Personnel Office on selecting position overseen by the DNI throughout subordinate agencies, as well as concurrence by relevant cabinet officials and the CIA. This exists by executive order, but many presidents, PPOs, and cabinet agency heads do not follow executive order guidance and necessary norms. The importance of trust, character, and the ability to work together to achieve a joint set of intelligence goals established by the president cannot be overstated. It is a mission that can be accomplished only with the conductor and his orchestra playing in sync. Provide additional support for such economic and supply chain focused agencies as the Department of Commerce. Information sharing and feedback can help sub-agencies like the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security to improve their understanding of the threat from China and thereby counter it more effectively. They can also aid the development of export control mechanisms and potential outbound investment screening where necessary. Brief, specific governance language should be considered that would apply counterterrorist authority models to the broader functions of the U.S. government insofar as they are needed to counter 21st century nation state threats. The success of any D&I rests with support from the president. Any revised Executive Order 12333 must serve to express unequivocal support for the DNI in executing the mandates that an amend order would provide. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. The CIA is a foreign intelligence collection service tasked with collecting human intelligence, HUMINT, providing all source intelligence analysis and reporting and conducting covert action when required to do so by the president. The CIA has its roots in the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, which is the United States established during World War II as a paramilitary and intelligence collection organization. After World War II, President Harry Truman disbanded the OSS and the CIA was established in law by the National Security Act of 1947. As with every agency in government, the president's election sets a new agenda for the country. Public servants must be mindful that they are required to help the president implement that agenda while remaining apolitical, upholding the Constitution and laws of the United States, and earning the public trust. The president requires a CIA that provides unbiased and apolitical foreign intelligence information and, when necessary, can act capably and effectively on any covert action findings. Executing the mission. The CIA's success depends on firm direction from the president and solid internal CIA director appointed leadership. Decisive senior leaders must commit to carrying out the president's agenda and be willing to take calculated risks. Therefore, the next president-elect and incoming presidential personnel office should identify a director nominee who can foster a mission-driven culture by making necessary personnel and structural changes. The president-elect should choose a deputy director who without needing Senate confirmation, can immediately begin to implement the president's agenda. This includes halting all current hiring to prevent the burrowing in of outgoing political personnel. Additional appointees should be placed within the agency as needed to assist the director in supervising its functioning. The director and deputy directors should request briefings on all CIA activities and presence overseas, as well as any CIA-controlled access programs and assist covert action findings without exception. The director and deputy director should meet with all directorates and mission centers, prioritizing those that are aligned most closely with the president's priorities and calibrating collection and operations based on the president's intelligence requirements. This includes any areas where the CIA must be conducting its own diplomacy parallel to official State Department policy. It must be clear the CIA's liaisons relationships overseas must follow and not contradict those set at the policy level by the president through the State Department. The other principal offices responsible for executing the CIA's mission include the Directorate of Operations, the Directorate of Analysis, Directorate of Science and Technology, Directorate of Support, and Directorates of Digital Innovation. If senior leadership finds any program or operation to be inconsistent with the president's agenda, the director should immediately halt that program or operation. Reigning in bureaucracy. The CIA's bureaucracy continues to grow. Because mid-level managers lack accountability, there are areas in which personnel are not responsive to any authority, including the president. The president should instruct the director to hire or promote new individuals to lead the various directorates and mission centers. This new crop of mid-level leaders should carry out clear directives from senior CIA leadership, which means more accountability and new ways of thinking to benefit the mission. In addition, the president should task the director with significantly broadening recruitment, expediting onboarding practices, and shifting resources away from headquarters, including terminal generalists, GS-15S, when OPM buyouts, forced rotations, or up and out personnel policies are set for particular positions. The CIA must find creative ways to align mission requirements with hiring needs, recruit diverse sets of individuals with unique backgrounds, and become more open to hiring private sector experts directly into senior positions. In addition, the director should break the cable of bureaucrats in DC by permanently moving various directorates, such as support in science and technology, out of Virginia, and possibly open campuses outside of DC where analysts and other experts can contribute virtually. Redirecting resources. Certain CIA employees and offices have focused on promoting divisive, ideological, or cultural agendas and fostering a damaging culture of risk aversion and complacency. As soon as possible, the director should divert resources from any activities that promote unnecessary and distracting social engineering. The director should implement changes in promotion criteria that reward individuals for creative thinking and quality of recruitments and products rather than numeric metrics or the achievements of benchmarks that are not essential to the mission. Not all careers in espionage are created equal, and the director should incentivize and reward applicants who are willing to accept high risk over those who are climbing the ranks simply by doing business as usual. The director should refocus the CIA to an OSS like culture and mandate that all CIA employees acquire, as a condition of securing senior GS 14 plus rank, additional or enhanced language skills, technical or cyber expertise, or field training or serve in overseas assignments. Covert action. Covert action can be a valuable tool in helping further the president's foreign policy agenda if implemented in concert with other forms of government power. As codified in the US Code, the term covert action means an activity or activities of the United States government to influence political, economic, or military conditions abroad, where it is intended that the role of the United States government will not be apparent or acknowledged publicly. The president initiates a covert action with a written finding that explains why such an action is necessary to support identifiable foreign policy objectives of the United States and is important to the national security of the United States. The statute assumes the president will use the CIA as the principal action element to achieve the objectives of covert action findings. However, the president need not feel constrained to utilize only the CIA. Each finding shall specify each department, agency, or entity of the United States government authorized to fund or otherwise participate in any significant way in such action. For example, the Department of Defense maintains certain clandestine capabilities under Title 10 authorities that may resemble but far exceed in scale similar capabilities outside of DoD. Generally, such DoD capabilities can be employed such a combat theater only if they are determined to be traditional military activities. In practical terms, this means that many DoD capabilities, including those in the space and cyber domains, can be employed only at the initiation of armed conflict. Given the range of global threats the United States faces today, the president should consider whether DoD's complete set of capabilities should be used to support potential covert actions. The problem, unfortunately, is that certain elements in the State Department, IC, and DoD trade on risk aversion or political bureaucracy to delay execution of the president's foreign policy goals. A future conservative president should therefore identify individuals on the transition team who are familiar with the implementation of covert action with a view to placing them in key NSC, CIA, ODNI, and DoD positions. These knowledgeable teams can assist in any review of current covert actions and potentially planning for new actions. Immediately after the inauguration, the president should task the NSC's Senior Director for Intelligence Programs with conducting a 60-day review of any current covert action findings, including their effectiveness, evaluating new covert actions that might be needed to implement the president's foreign policy goals, and reporting back to the president. Such an assessment should be conducted independently of the agencies responsible for the actions under review. As part of the review, the senior director for the intelligence programs should identify which departments or agencies, such as the CIA or DoD, are best equipped to achieve the objectives set out in new and existing findings. After the 60-day review, the president should demand creative thinking and a clear strategy as to how covert action fits within the president's broader foreign policy strategy, to include possibly modifying or rescinding any current findings, drafting new findings, and streamlining or eliminating needless bureaucracy, particularly at state, to facilitate more expeditious decisions on tactical covert action. Carefully thought should be given to the metrics by which the effectiveness of covert action programs will be measured to ensure the appropriate use of government resources and to guard against the possibility of covert action being used with little scrutiny in ways that are inconsistent with overt foreign policy goals. ODNI and CIA organizational recommendations. The ODNI and CIA operate under authority provided by the Central Intelligence Agency of 1949, which means they have greater latitude than the rest of the federal government with respect to the hiring and firing of personnel. Both organizations and other areas of the IC have struggled from a human resources and talent management standpoint to recruit, onboard, and maintain personnel in a timely fashion to fill the IC's ever-changing needs. At a time when the intelligence community needs significantly more personnel with the proper technical language capable and diverse backgrounds, including applicants from elements of the business community, the incoming directors of both agencies need to make this effort a top priority. Past DNIs, chiefs of staff, and additional front office staff historically have come from outside the IC, commonly under a misconstrued staff reserve structure that is intended to avoid a Schedule C designation within the IC. The director should handpick qualified, properly cleared personnel for front office and managerial leadership positions, such as the DNIs, chief of staff, and heads of legislative affairs and strategic communications, to oversee those divisions with career IC staff reporting to them. The incoming DNI and CIA director should also consider changes in the Senior National Intelligence Services, SNIS, Senior Intelligence Services, SIS. Senior officers should be required to sign mobility agreements that allow ODNI and CIA leadership to move them within the IC every 2 years if necessary. Many qualified and distinguished senior officers serve throughout the IC, but some long-serving generalist officers no longer perform at a high capacity, are management driven, do not serve the IC's changing needs, and limit junior officers' prospects for growth and advancement. And an incoming administration should consider studying and implementing additional requirements as a condition of promotion to GS 15, SNIS, SIS, and explore concepts such as up and out, beginning at the GS 14, 15 levels and above for some fields. The IC should evaluate areas of bloat and underperforming cadre at work with OPM on authority for voluntary separation buyouts, allowing ODNI and CIA leadership to shrink size and reduce duplication of effort while promoting healthy turnover within their senior ranks would encourage new ideas and perspectives from mid-career officers and potentially from employees hired from outside their agencies. The ODNI and CIA should maximize their direct hire and incentive building authorities to bring in talented and properly cleared individuals to serve in positions requiring technical language and cyber expertise. Finally, the human resources and talent management systems for onboarding purposes at the ODNI, CIA, and some other elements of the IC are fundamentally broken. For example, according to current CIA Director William Burns, it recently took more than 600 days on average for a CIA applicant receive his or her necessary security clearance. Although security clearance procedures have been somewhat improved in recent years, and Burns has committed CIA to reduce that to no more than 180 days. That degradation in other areas of the process has limited the IC's capacity to attract qualified and needed expertise, preventing the abuse of intelligence for partisan purposes. The intelligence function must be protected from bottom up and top down politicization if it is to play its proper role in our national security decision making process. Unfortunately, both types of politicization have occurred recently to the detriment of the intelligence community's reputation and credibility. More important, the politicization of intelligent risk contributing to policy failures, as we saw with the Iraq War, or even undermining our democratic system here at home. In particular, the IC must restore confidence in its political neutrality to rectify the damage done by the actions of former IC leaders and personnel regarding the claims of Trump-Russia collusion following the 2016 election and the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop investigation and media revelations of its existence during the 2020 election. But the problem is not confined to the executive branch struggle between the IC and policymakers. It also relates to the IC's relationship with Congress, as evinced by DNI James Cooper's failure to answer honestly in response to congressionally questions about government surveillance programs. The ODNI and CIA are undergoing a crisis of confidence based on several factors. First, President Barack Obama's CIA director, John Brennan, gravely damaged the CIA by minimizing the Directorate of Operations and exploiting intelligence analysis as a political weapon after he left office. Brennan's role in the letters signed by 51 former intelligence officials before the 2020 election is unclear, but in dismissing the Hunter Biden laptop as Russian disinformation, the CIA was discredited, and the shocking extent of politicization among some former IC officials was revealed. Restoring respect for the IC as an independent provider of information and analysis, while also ensuring that it is responsive to the legitimate needs of policymakers, will require reinforcing essential norms and institutions. However, we should also recognize that achieving the perfect balance that avoids the pathologies of too much distance or too much closeness and responsiveness to policymakers is not only difficult, but probably impossible. Thus, given the very nature of the business and the political process, which will depend on the promotion of certain norms or virtues on both sides of the principal agent relationship. Specifically, the DNI and CIA director should use their authority under the National Security Act of 1947 to expedite the clearance of personnel to meet mission and needs and remove IC employees who have abused their positions of trust. An area of particular concerns is that personnel under investigation for improprieties have been allowed to retire before internal investigations have been completed. Directors of both agencies must instill further confidence in their workforces. Congress and the American people that they can and will deal effectively with personnel that fail to live up to their oath to the Constitution, adhere to ethical and moral standards as expected by America's taxpayers, and faithfully execute the law. The president should direct the DNI and the attorney president and the attorney general by direction of the respective inspectors general and IC analytic ombudsman to conduct a further audit of all IC equities of past politicization and abuses of intelligence information. For example, a recent IC ombudsman analysis during the 2020 election noted if our political leaders in the White House and Congress believe we are withholding intelligence because of organizational turf wars or political considerations, the legitimacy of intelligence communities' work is lost. The president should immediately revoke the security clearance of any former directors, deputy directors, or other senior intelligence officials who discuss their work their work in the press or on social media without prior clearance from the current director. IC agencies, including the CIA, should minimize the public presence and vigorously investigate any and all leaks, all information classified or otherwise. The ODNI and CIA should fire or refer for prosecution any employee who is suspected of leaking information, and penalties should also include the removal of pension benefits for those who are found guilty. Additionally, tools are needed to prevent leaked intelligence from being used as a weapon in policy debates by IC leaders or decision makers in the executive branch or Congress. In addition, the Department of Justice should use all of the tools at its disposal to investigate leaks and should rescind damaging guidance by Attorney General Merrick Garland that limits investigators' ability to identify records of unauthorized disclosures of classified information to the media. Personnel have sufficient access to legitimate whistleblower claims under protections provided by inspectors general in Congress. The director and IC must prioritize hiring additional counterintelligence and security personnel to assist in this effort. Military and civilian IC training should include stronger emphasis on the norm of political neutrality, including a mandatory course on professionalism and repercussions for abuse in the execution of duties in all degree programs at the National Intelligence University. Intelligence leaders need to model norms of neutrality and respect for the decision-making authority of the president, appointed officials, and Congress. This includes building trust with key decision makers by not using their positions and privileged access to information to influence policymaking indirectly or directly in an inappropriate fashion, especially by engaging in threat inflation. IC leaders should practice extreme restraint in engaging with the public and the media. They should seek to work in the shadows rather than in the limelight. Potential restrictions on such appearances should supplement this norm, preventing political leaders from using IC officials to support an administration position as they do with military leaders. Retired IC leaders should similarly support the neutrality norm by not becoming public figures. Congress should not use IC leaders as pawns in policy struggles with the president or other party during their appearances before committees of the House and the Senate. While Congress has a proper oversight role, it should distinguish between information that needs to be public and information that should be discussed in private with members of the IC. A DNI should call balls and strikes to those on both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill who attempt to weaponize the use of selection intelligence to feed political narratives. Political leaders should avoid manipulation by appointment, a practice by which intelligence leaders are selected for their policy views or political loyalties included instead of their skilled expertise. Presidents should also avoid public rebukes and pressure from the intelligence profession, which can include intimidation and bullying to shape IC analysis. This will be easier if IC leaders live by the norms of neutrality and thus are not seen as political actors for whom political responses are deemed necessary. Intelligence leaders and professionals should never cook the books for presidents or change or shape their analysis to preserve access or status. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. A future president should understand the importance of FISA while also seeking reforms and accountability for any abuses of its authorities. When discussing FISA and what changes may need to be made, it is important to note and recognize that there are stark differences between the individual FISA authorities. Section 702 of FISA, for example, allows the IC to target foreign terrorists, spies, cyber hackers, and other bad actors, but not if they are not U.S. persons when their communications pass through the United States. While this authority may lapse, if Congress does not resolve the issue by the end of 2023, Section 702 should be understood as an essential tool in the fight against terrorism, malicious cyber actors, and Chinese espionage. These are two major national security priorities for an incoming president. It is an imperative that the need to use properly maintained and accountable authorities to counter these challenges be recognized. Section 702 is a vital program that often provides the lion's share of intelligence used in the President's Daily Brief, PDB. An independent review by the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, the PCLB, found that it was not abused. Nevertheless, Congress should review the PCLOB's upcoming 2023 report to help it determine whether any reforms or codification of recent administration changes in FISA processes are needed. Other authorities in Title I, Other authorities in Title I and II, or Title I and III, often referred to as traditional FISA, have elicited valid concerns about the politicization of intelligence collection authority in recent years. When seeking surveillance of Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, for example, the FBI and Department of Justice concealed vital information from a specialized court and submitted applications that were riddled with errors. An incoming conservative president should consider reforms designed to prevent future partisan abuses of national security authority. A package of strong provisions to protect against such partisanship might include stiffer penalties and mandatory investigations when intelligence leaks are aimed at domestic political targets, tighter controls on otherwise lawful intercepts that also collect the communications of domestic political figures, an express prohibition on politically motivated use of intelligence authorities, and reforms to improve the accountability of the Justice Department and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. To keep the intelligence credentials from being used for partisan purposes, former high-ranking intelligence officials who retain a clearance should remain subject to the Hatch Act after they leave government to deter them from tying their political stance or activism to their continuing privilege of access to classified government information. The IC should be prohibited from monitoring so called domestic disinformation. Such activity can easily slip into suppression of an opposition party speech, is corrosive of First Amendment protections, and raises questions about impartiality when the IC chooses not to act. China focused changes, reforms, and resources. The term whole of government is all too frequently overused, but in responding to the generational threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party, that is exactly the approach that our national security apparatus should adopt. CIA Director William Burns has formally established a China Mission Center focused on these efforts, but it can be successful only if it is given the necessary personnel, cross community collaborations, and resources. That is uncertain at this point, and just how serious the organization is taking the staffing of the center is unclear. A critical strategic question for an incoming administration and IC leaders will be how, when, and with whom do we share our classified intelligence? Understanding when to pass things to liaison for what purpose will be vital to outmaneuvering China in the intelligence sphere. Questions for president will include what is our overarching conception of the adversarial relationship and competition? How does the intelligence sharing fit into that conception? Some members of the Congress have said that intelligence relationships, such as the Five Eyes, should be expanded to include other allies in the Asia and Pacific End, for example, a Nine Eyes framework. This fails to take into account the fact that any blanket expansion would necessarily involve protecting the sources and methods of a large and quite possibly more diverse group of member countries that might or might not have congruent interests. That being said, however, a future conservative president should consider what resources and information sharing relationships could be included in an ad hoc or quasi-formal intelligence expansion, for example, with the Quad, among nations trying to counter the threat from China. Significant technology, language skills, and financial intelligence resources are needed to counter China's capabilities. The IC was caught flat-footed by the recent discovery of China's successful test of a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile. No longer can America's information and technological dominance be assumed. China's gains and intense focus on emerging technologies have taken it in some areas from being a near peer competitor to probably being ahead of the United States. China's centralized government allocates endless resources, sometimes inefficiently, to its strategic Made in China 2025 and military apparatuses, which combine government, military, and private sector activities on quantum information sciences and technologies, artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, biotechnologies, and advanced robotics. The IC must do more than understand these advancements. It must rally non-government and ally partners and inspire unified action to counter them. In addition to combat China's economic espionage, authorities and loopholes in the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, will have to be examined and addressed in conjunction with the Attorney General. Many issues within the broader government can be tied back to a more general congressional understanding of the threat due to the compartmentalization of committee jurisdictions and the responsibilities of executive agencies to brief on the nature of the threats. Broader committee jurisdictions should receive additional intelligence from IC agencies as necessary to inform China's unique and more comprehensive threat across layers of the US government, bureaucracy, and economy. Former DI, former DNI John Ratcliffe increased the intelligence budget as it related to China by 20%. When people ask me why did I did that, he explained in an interview, I say because no one would let me increase it by 40%. I had an $85 billion combined annual budget for both the National Intelligence Program and countering China. It isn't enough. From an intelligence standpoint, the need to understand Chinese motivations, capabilities, and intents will be of paramount importance to a future conservative president. It is therefore also of a paramount importance that the whole of government be rowing together. National Counterintelligence and Security Center, NCSC. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, SSCI, has taken a keen interest in possibly updating the codified language underpinning much of the nation's counterintelligence apparatus. Spy versus spy threats continue to exist, but the rise of China and to an extent Russia's machinists move beyond the governmental sphere to technological, economic, supply chain, cyber academic, state, and local espionage threats at a level of the country has never seen. The asymmetric threats include cyber non-traditional collection and issues involving legitimate businesses serving as collection platforms. Barring statutory changes that could occur before 2025, a future conservative president should further empower and resource the IC by executive order by or through suggested changes in the Counterintelligence Enhancement Act, CEA, of 2002. NCSC was given some authority for outreach efforts on behalf of the IC for counterintelligence education, insider threats, and broader U.S. government best practices. But there remain significant deltas between Title 50 and non-Title 50 entities protections. Primary operational elements should remain at the FBI and CIA, with the Bureau and NCSC collaborating on non-governmental outreach. While there is no need to create a separate agency, a future president and DNI should amplify NCSC's authorities and roles with respect to counterintelligence, strategy, policy, outreach, and governance, including supporting necessary joint duty assignments, JDA, for FBI and CIA personnel. At the same time, the FBI requires significant additional resources and legal authorities to fulfill its statutory role as the lead operational counterintelligence agency in dealing with the ever-growing threats posted by our adversaries. The CEA should be updated to include foreign espionage efforts aimed at universities. Corporate America, technology companies, research institutions, and academia must be willing, educated partners in this generational fight to protect our national security interests, economic interests, national sovereignty, and intellectual property, as well as the broader rules-based order, all while avoiding the tendency to cave to the left-wing activists and investors who ignore the China threat and increasingly dominate the corporate world. Reinstitution of the National Security Higher Education Advisory Board and the National Security Business Alliance Council should be prioritized with leadership from the NCSC, the FBI, or a combination of both entities. When the CCP steals at least $400 billion to $600 billion in intellectual property each year, it is time to devote some strategic thinking to exactly how and to what degree counterintelligence efforts can help to protect America's commercial endeavors. If Chinese strategic technology gains are happening almost entirely in transnational commercial space, for example, and the private sector is also gathering and analyzing some critical intelligence. These essential data points should assist in national level counterintelligence efforts. The NCSC, we're on page 218 on the download and page 252 of 922. The NCSC, intelligence community, is the section we're on. The NCSC was created in the aftermath of 9/11 as the Terrorist Threat Integration Center, TTIC, which later became the National Counterterrorism Center, NCTC, pursuant to President George W. Bush Executive Order 13354. The NCTC was an organization of approximately 36 detainees from across the U.S. government with the mandate to integrate counterterrorism, intelligence, and missions, including terrorist screening. Eventually, in November 2014, the Director of National Intelligence, DNI, established NCSC by combining the Office of the National Counterintelligence Executive with the Center for Security Evaluation, the Special Security Center, and the National Insider Threat Task Force to effectively integrate and align counterintelligence and security mission areas under a single organizational construct. The director of NCSC serves support of the DNI's role as Security Executive Agency, SECEA, to develop, implement, and oversee all integrate personnel security initiatives throughout the U.S. government. NCSC has added value in which areas as fusing cross-community intelligence for counterterrorism watchlisting purposes and improving information sharing while carrying roughly half of the overall cadre for the ODNI. An incoming administration should focus NCTC on integrative tasks, many of which cannot be carried out elsewhere in the IC, but should not use personnel and resources for redundant analysis that duplicate the work of such IC entities as the FBI and CIA. Additional areas for reform. Additional integrity. The tradecraft of intelligence analysis is mostly a collection of lessons learned over decades about what works and does not work in a profession whose high stakes work is performed by thousands, but that also bears little outside scrutiny and provides few metrics by which to gauge success or failure on a regular basis. These lessons have accumulated from the perceived misuse of intelligence by consumers, as was the case with respect to war-related assessments in the Johnson and Bush administrations. Failures such as the failures to warn the collapse of the Soviet Union and the specific threat of 9/11. Success in piecing together tactical and often technical puzzles, such as estimates of Iranian nuclear program maturations, and strategic victories, such as anticipating critical geopolitical developments that have been years in the making. Historically, this tradecraft has been passed on in the form of unwritten rules, learned on the job and in agency-specific training classes. But increasingly, since the intelligence reforms of 2004, they have been codified IC-wide under the direction of the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Mission Integration. A RAND study of U.S. intelligence tradecraft notes that the vast majority of intelligence analysts reside outside the central intelligence agency and do work that is tactical, operational, and current. The study goes on to note that the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, has many analysts as the CIA has in that the National Security Agency, NSA, has several times as many analysts as does the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NGA. indicating both the breadth of the IC's technical collection and its emphasis both on developing analysis, who can interpret secret human or technical intelligence, and quick turnaround pieces, and on countering tactical asymmetric threats like terrorism. During the Cold War, however, there was more balanced analytic focus with greater emphasis on strategic intelligence issues as a means of outcompeting the Soviet Union. This kind of analysis deals not only in secret, but also in mysteries, making well founded but ultimately unknowable predictions about future actions by a competitor or adversary. The tradecraft necessary to succeed in strategic analysis requires substantive regional and topical expertise developed over the years to supplement experience in the daily collection and understanding of secrets. Institutionally, it also requires that agencies' analytic processes be open to discussion, debate, and dissent because analysts must work together to describe a probable range of future outcomes and warn about unproven current threats, rather than using the collection to solve a single puzzle with a definitive answer. Regarding its mission to follow longer term issues, the IC is falling short in resourcing and in openness and dissenting opinions, which, if taken seriously, can help responsible officials respond more effectively to threats and threat actors. The IC Analytic Ombudsman has expressed concern that hyperpartisanship has threatened to undermine the foundations of our republic, penetrating even into the intelligence community. For example, the Ombudsman noted in a report on the IC's handling of election threat analysis in 2020 that, in his view, CIA officials had deliberately downplayed dissenting views and coordination comments expressed by experts at the National Intelligence Council and elsewhere who felt there was an evidence of Beijing's intent to exert at least some influence on the 2020 election, as opposed to the consensus view that Beijing did not interfere in US elections. Senior CIA analysts and leaders made it difficult to have a healthy analytic conversation in a confrontational environment while violating multiple official IC tradecraft standards. By not allowing dissents or considering alternatives, the CIA exercised undue influence on intelligence. Subsequent exposure of China-linked online influence and the FBI's warnings about continued efforts through the 2020 midterms highlight the folly of undue certainty without consideration of alternatives. On election influence and other controversial issues, such as the origin of COVID 19, analysts at the most powerful intelligence agencies have increasingly tended to use the leeway they have been given to insert their political views into their work in order to influence, if possibly even control, the analytic process. They do this in ways that attempt to squash dissent and impair the creation of a culture in which entrenched views are challenged and unpopular analytical lines can survive or not accordingly to their merits. To help the United States and its leaders to outcompete China across multifaceted societal, economic, military, and technological threats, the IC's capability to conduct strategic intelligence analysis that is relevant to policymakers in both parties must be rebuilt and strengthened. Because Beijing may be a peer or even exceed U.S. capabilities in some areas, the post 9/11 analytic focus on quick turnaround secrets is not good enough. Strategic planning informed by intelligence must take place for the United States to stay ahead of whatever new threats China may pose. An incoming conservative president will have the opportunity to signal the demand for such strategic products and prioritize the production through communications to intelligence leaders and formal mechanisms such as shifting priorities within the national intelligence priority framework and structuring this president's daily brief. The incoming DNI should also emphasize implementing the recommendations in the Ombudsman report, especially regarding objectivity, the inclusion of dissenting viewpoints, and more serious efforts to hold senior leaders accountable for back channel attempts to channel or suppress analytic views. Accounting for the long history of intelligence failures and surprises, an incoming conservative president must appreciate the ambiguity, complexity, limits, and assumptions inherent in intelligence assessments. Intelligence often deals with the human dimension and complex decision systems within a foreign country or organization, and this makes it consistently accurate predictions difficult, if not impossible, to develop. Seeing something and understanding what you're seeing are two different things. So a president should consistently and patiently press the IC about its potential biases, assumptions, methodologies, and sourcing. With regard to election threat analysis and political controversial topics, agency leaders should take seriously the ombudsman admonition that we need to maintain tradecraft standards across all countries and topics by ensuring that equitable standards apply across all foreign threat actors. Analysis should be put forward without regard to the domestic political ramifications of of intelligence conclusions. Obligations to share in real-time auditing capability. The federal government has made admirable progress in recent years by being more forward-leaning in sharing cyber threat intelligence with private sector partners and the public, emphasizing that the protective nature of such information is of value only if put into the right hands at the right time. Since critical infrastructure and services are overwhelmingly owned, managed, and defended by the private sector in the United States, there's been an increasingly emphasis on declassifying intelligence and sharing actionable information with private sector partners, often through industry-specific information sharing and analysis centers, ISACs, regional meetings of government and private sector experts called InfraGard, run by the FBI, direct public notification from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and increasingly the NSA, and more discreet one-on-one engagements led by the collecting agencies. These programs properly recognize the private sector's role in providing cybersecurity for Americans. In practice, however, the intelligence shared by the US government through these venues is too often already known or no longer relevant by the time it makes its way through the downgrade process for sharing. In addition, government shared information often needs to take advantage of the opportunity to provide context such as attribution, trends, and size of the observed cyber problem. As warranted, additional context should be provided to the private sector as a matter of routine. To continue improving the US government's ability to defend the country's most vital networks, the IC must adopt an obligation to share policy process, including the capacity for right to release intelligence products whereby newly discovered technical indicators, targeting, and other intelligence relevant to cyber defense are automatically provided either to the public or to targeted entities within 48 hours of their collection, which is how counterterrorism intelligence has been managed for years when it comes to a duty to warn. Under this policy, agency heads should still have the flexibility to withhold intelligence for operational or counterintelligence reasons, but would need to report regularly to Congress on the number of and justification for exceptions. This policy would make sharing intelligence and defending networks the default, as it already is in the rest of the cybersecurity community outside the IC, to improve the quantity, relevance, and timeliness of defensive information while ensuring accountability for top leaders when they must withhold this information. One of the most significant challenges within the IC is presented by the need to share information promptly along the 18 elements of the intelligence enterprise. The only long term solution to the understandable tension between the need to share information and the need to protect intelligence sources and methods is a robust real-time auditing capability that electronically flags unauthorized access. Under an identity management system with real-time audit, even the most sensitive information acquired by America's intelligence agencies can be shared, and the access into use of that information are appropriately monitored. Establishing a real time auditing capability is essential to decreasing the risk for the heads of intelligence agencies in meeting their statutory requirements to ensure that they protect sources and methods associated with the classified information their agencies collect. Overclassification. There's a broad consensus across the US government and across stakeholders that the system for classifying, declassifying, and otherwise marking and handling sensitive information is at a crossroads. Exorbitant amounts of classified data are created daily, and agency personnel often mistakenly choose classification as a default selection to ensure national security. At the same time, the effectiveness of downgraded and carefully declassified information to support foreign policy efforts has been borne out in, for example, alerting the broader world of Russia's buildup and likely plans for its invasion of Ukraine. Two executive orders principally govern how the US government handles classified and sensitive information. Executive Order 13526, Classified National Security Information, issued in 2009, prescribes the classification levels and procedures for declassification. Executive Order 13556, Controlled Unclassified Information, issued in 2010, aimed to establish a uniform program for managing all unclassified information that requires safeguarding or dissemination controls. The current system for declassifying classified national security information, CNSI, is extraordinarily analog, requiring experts' review of individual records. Declassification policies are based on human review of paper and need to contemplate and handle the proliferation and volume of digital records created by agencies. The US government will soon reach the point at which manual review is impossible. The declassification of CSNI should support key US national security objectives, reflect mission priorities, and not serve solely as a necessary procedural function. Reform should include tightened definitions and greater specificity for categories of information requiring protection, more stringent policies to effect significant reductions in the number of original classification authorities, OCAs, stricter accountability measures at the OCA level, and more detailed security classification guides, enhanced metrics for accuracy of classification, a general simplification of the overall system for the benefit of users. On the back end, the OD and I run the classification process that is faster, nimbler, default to automated and larger scale should be a priority. Additionally, investments in IT are required to deal with the growing volumes of CNSI collected and produced in the digital age, along with many years worth of CNSI collected and produced in the digital age, along with many years' worth of existing analog and digital holdings that could provide valuable historical insights. An incoming administration needs to explore options to prioritize funding for innovations in declassification management. For example, by establishing a budget line example specifically for the modernization of the classification or designating funding for program classification management as a special interest item. The administration will also need to transition to using technology, including tech tools and services for managing big data, which provide a robust electronic record repository, making information within and across agency easier to organize and locate, facilitating more rapid review and review capabilities for records of emerging interests. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, which when incorporated into existing business practices, enables machine interpretation of unstructured text and data, applies decision support technology to enable more consistent classification decisions and expedite reviews between agencies, and expansion of commercial cloud services, which facilitate the rapid testing of deployment of new tools and technologies. However, technology is not a panacea. Human expertise is in information holdings, and routine validation of the technology will also be necessary. With or without machine assistance, agencies will require more people and more varied skill sets to improve their ability to meet the electronic records errors classification and declassification demands in serving in command administration's goal. Broader U.S. government and IC intelligence needs. Increasingly, conflicts among U.S. adversaries such as China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are conducted in the realms of technology and finance. This challenge requires new tools, authorities, and technological expertise across the U.S. government, particularly at the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, and the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, which is housed at the Treasury Department. An incoming conservative president should task his DNI and Secretary of Commerce with increasing coordination, the resources needed for BIS and SCIF capacity, and proper necessary intelligence sharing to counter the activities of multifaceted adversaries such as China. This would include additional work with private sector expertise, granting clearances to niche sector experts and United States citizen, commercial, and financial partners as needed. Cover is in the digital age. Even in the public domain, it is becoming increasingly clear that protecting the identities of undercover intelligence officers is difficult in the digital age. The truth is that as our daily activities are conducted predominantly in the digital domain, our antiquated system for providing cover to undercover officers has lagged woefully behind the threat from foreign adversaries. The DIA, CIA, and FBI are increasingly aware of this threat and are devoting resources to the problem. Their back office infrastructure, however, is such that they are still using methods for providing cover from decades past that put valuable intelligence officers at unnecessary risk. How intelligence officers and their families are taught to use smartphones and social media, travel, conduct banking, and take and share pictures, even how and when they are paid, can make it difficult to protect identities. Legends, fake backstories, and identities are often weak, incomplete, and unable to stand up to a basic Google search. Officers operating under non-official cover are offered even less protection and training to help them succeed. In addition, ubiquitous technical surveillance (UTS) techniques being refined by technologies emanating from the regimes in China and Russia will continue to be highly challenging for intelligence officers. An incoming administration will need to double down on resourcing and training so that members of the IC will have the expertise they need to operate clandestinely and successfully against hard targets. Privacy Shield. For many years, the European Union has tried to force the US companies operating in Europe to follow its data privacy regulations. Misleading claims in the 2013 Snowden leaks destroyed the initial safe harbor framework that allowed American companies to transfer data across the Atlantic. Its successor, the Privacy Shield framework, was struck down by European courts on the grounds that it provides insufficient protections for EU citizens against hypothetical US government surveillance. Those same European courts exempted the intelligence services of EU member states from the standards applied to the US, suggesting that trade protectionism may be the real motive behind data privacy regulations. In 2022, the Biden administration negotiated a new agreement, the Transatlantic Data Privacy Framework, intended to withstand European legal challenges. Given the fate of its predecessors, it is not necessary that it will survive. Executive Order 14086, enhancing safeguards for United States signals intelligence activities, implements this new framework by attempting to align signals intelligence collection practices with European privacy regulations. At most, the executive order's changes will be helpful support for the framework in European litigations. At worst, they could sand in the gears of important intelligence programs. An incoming conservative president should reset Europe's expectations. Brussels has always arbitraged the difference between being a military ally against, for example, Russia, and conducting a full-blown trade conflict with the United States. Restrictions on data exports have been part of the trade conflict, but now they could seriously harm our military intelligence capabilities. Moreover, restrictions on US intelligence collection hurt the Europeans themselves, especially as the United States shares unprecedented amounts of intelligence on Russia's invasion of Ukraine with Europeans. Europe is telling the United States to meet intelligence oversight standards that no European country meets. At the same time, exports of data to China are unexamined, and so far free from legal challenges. That violates World Trade Organization agreements as an arbitrary and discriminatory data protection standard than one adopted by the court. That interpretation would be binding, at least as a gloss on the earlier treaty. The United States has never seriously pushed back against the EU. Now is the time. An incoming president should ask for an immediate study of the implementation of the Executive Order 14086 and suspend any provisions that unduly burden intelligence collection. At the same time, in negotiation with the Europeans, the United States should make clear that the continued sharing of intelligence with EU members states depends on successful resolution of this issue within the first 2 years of a president's term. It is time for a real solution, not the 30 years of stopgaps imposed by Brussels. So we're going to take that opportunity and stop there for now. And we're going to take a look at making. We gotta breathe and be able to hear the message. So we're going to stop on page 259 of 922, and we're right at the President's Daily Brief (PDB), and on the download we're on page 226. almost a third of the way done. So I think, let me see, 25% of 922 would be, give me a second, because there's something, because technology affords things like calculators in your life. So when you have 922, and I'm going to give the correct percentage. I'm going to go 922 divided by 259. Wrong way around, so I can get the right percentage. So I can tell you the percent. We are 28% done. So giving you an accurate percentage of the amount read, thus far is 28%. That means we have 72% to go. And being a person of making sure that you come on board as a Random Acts of Kindness initiative, consider sponsorship. Consider exploring opportunities going to cccwecaremi.com/sponsor. Random Acts of Kindness. This Random Acts of Kindness is a bespoke random act of kindness that Adriane Mays is doing, reading the Project 2025, preparing us mentally for the mindset if we have Donald Trump as president. But you too can actually present and be a sponsor of the Random Acts of Kindness virtual celebration to be held September 11th, 2024. So to become a sponsor, we have different levels, and your contribution will be making a lasting impact into the Random Acts of Kindness community. So our Motor City Visionary sponsorship at $15,000, and this premier sponsorship status with Random Acts of Kindness will have co-branding of name and logo on all event materials, logo on PR marketing and social media, company signage at giveaways, opportunities to materials and event gift bags, and a virtual at the virtually celebration on September 11th, being able to speak virtually, excuse me, recognition in CC Because We Care Foundation's annual report, 15 virtual raffle tickets for other sponsors that come on board with in-kind donations, just like the Levita Massage, Canton, Michigan. Thank you for coming on board, as well as virtual event space. So Motor City Visionary is our premier sponsorship package, but we have other sponsorship levels: 10,000, 5,000, 2,500, 1,000, 250 as a virtual exhibitor. Hey, even if you want to just do an in-kind donation of a gift certificate, in-kind donations are going to be available for the raffle to have fun during our virtual celebration on September 11th, 2022. And if you want to just donate, give me a call, 313-634-0200. Listen, we got you covered. And this is the community we're building together, the Random Acts of Kindness community. We're building it, and I want you to jump in as over the weekend. After this part is done, the next piece is building the community, right? Getting what is one thing that you can share with someone as a random act of kindness to give them knowledge about the Project 2025. So here's a link that I'm providing, as well as I am reading and doing this in parts and in sections, as you can see, because again, this is 900 pages, and being able to provide this information, it's a lot. And I know my butt. I always put my hand up for some things. Adriane Mays, AI genius. So again, I don't think I've read this this much in one time. And post in the comments if you read. I mean, like out loud. I haven't read this much out loud in a long time in a consistent basis, but it's all worth it when I read the comments. When I take a look at the comments and see that, I'm helping people that aren't able to read this 900-page document, just understand it first. Then start listening to the social media and the news, telling them what to do and not to do. But just providing the information, transparent, clear. Clarity is nothing but clarity, so you can make choices. If you want to go to A or B, you got to know what your options are. So I wanted to provide that as a random act of kindness. This bespoke billionaire mindset thought about it yesterday during Independence Day. And like I said, it was an ongoing thing, and it's just built up. So I'm going to get this part done so I can get to the next part. So drop in the comments what is dope for you. Detroit One Product Educate. But what's the last random acts of kindness that you had that literally made you light up? And I'll share this with you, as again, this being day 60 of the billionaire journey. You never know what God has around the corner. thank him for the opportunity just to live the challenge and plan to his direction. My direction, it worked. I kept saying before that it didn't work. It worked because it got me here. It got me here in the mindset of where I am now and knowing where I'm going to just kind of let go and let God. And when you have a higher power and have control, and you finally just take one day at a time and just put the 24 hours in front of you, you look at something like a Project 2025 and 900 pages, the mandate for leadership, and it looks intimidating. So part 5, I wanted to take that intimidation away and reaching out to different business owners, talking about the different innovation of donation items, like for example, with electric bikes, talking to different vendors for electric bikes and electric vehicles being on Joe Biden's campaign, not getting political whatsoever, but think about the versatility of electric vehicles. So if you have electric vehicles, you have electric bicycles. But if you have electric bicycles, they have things called electric unicycles, electric tricycles. They have electric four-wheelers that you don't need a license to actually ride. And it's so cool how these different brands and being a brand ambassador and building billionaire brands is what we do here with Being the Change LLC. Just having these opportunities to see how we can move within the realms of the Project 2025 if Donald Trump does actually come into office. So if you watch the debate like I did, you don't know what's going to happen, but you do have to prepare yourself for the education. So going to Google Trends and seeing that Project 2025 is something that's trending. However, taking a look, it's not a lot of people that are providing the clear-cut information. I'm not giving you my opinion. This is not a political stance that Adriane Mays is taking. I'm literally reading what is on the internet that is provided as information that we all need to read before we listen to anything in the social media. It's just like reading the book, getting the information, going and then making an assessment. How do you make a I was looking at some of the comments during some of my breaks. And how do you make an assessment or even make a yay or nay if you haven't read the whole document? You got to read it first. I can't talk bad about something I haven't read. What kind of person in validity? People do it all the time. But the thing is putting yourself in the 1% of the conversation. And so what that does with the billionaire mindset, because again, day 52, I already got my first billionaire client. That's Adriane Mays. So now putting myself in the 1% with those of the ocean theory, meaning if a lot of people have not, which they haven't, read this document and literally being able to interpret it and have it on my social media page for forever, and being able to then break it down into 60-second compartments so that other people can understand it and then take back and literally listen to it and learn. That's how we're going to build the wealth. The billionaire plan is not going to come overnight, my friends. I mean, it's one of those things, even if you hit $1 million tomorrow, you want to have the tools in place to be able to have the longevity to live life more abundantly, as Inika Gaines, my business partner and best friend and angel and vice president and treasurer of CCC Because We Care Foundation would say. Living life more abundantly, making things easier with the tools and automation, and having these programs of random acts of kindness, that's what we're here to do. I'm going to leave you with this. I was looking at Mr. Beast as he is what everybody wants, right? In regards to financial security, I suppose. But again, that's up for negotiation. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, if you look on Mr. Beast's social media, and I wish I could find it real quick, it shows him giving away money, and he gave away 100 houses, and he's just giving away stuff. And that's the direction that I want to see if I can find it real quick for us. But that's the direction that we want to go into here with CCC Because We Care Foundation, being a mortgage broker, just specializing in financial creation, financial education, wealth creation, travel experiences, health and wellness, and AI marketing education. But random acts of kindness, it kind of encompasses it all. And so Mr. Beast is giving away just his, he has his own community, which he builds, and I'll show this. He built 100 houses and gave them away. And Mr. Beast he's a YouTube guru here and has his own philanthropy page as well. So he gave every family in a village a full year's salary. This is his, let's take a look at Mr. Beast's philanthropy page.
6 months ago, this orphanage in South Africa looked like this. And despite having saved more than 5,000 children's lives over time, it was about to get shut down. When hearing about this, we made it our mission to ensure this doesn't happen by rebuilding 12 new homes with an ongoing supply of fresh food, as well as a brand new playground. This is Mama Rosie, who started the Bupuma Lele orphanage 30 years ago after a baby was abandoned on her doorstep.
Mama Rosie is an absolutely incredible person, but as hard as she's fought, as much as she's given, these kids were about to lose the only family, the only place they've ever known as home.
To ensure this does not happen, we spent the last 6 months working tirelessly so that these kids have a safe and clean environment to live in. We also made sure that Mama Rosie had seen none of the renovations before surprising her. This is going to be awesome.
Mama Rosie, you promised me you haven't seen anything yet?
Yes, I haven't seen anything.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Let's take this off.
Thank you.
Before surprising the kids that lived in the orphanage with their brand new home, we had to find someone that Mama Rosie held very dear to her heart. The last time we were here, Mama Rosie told us about a young boy named Yamkela who left the orphanage 14 years ago with the dream of becoming a musician. So Darren and Dan, a filmmaker and musician from Cape Town, tracked him down to be a part of the big reveal. They then took Yamkela to see his old bedroom that has been completely rebuilt. After months and months of grueling labor, it was finally time to surprise the kids.
The kids are all lining up outside right now, and we're about to bring them in and show them their brand new homes for the very first time.
Thank you so much for bringing dignity to these children, because it has boosted their self-esteem. They live in a better place.
We wanted to find out more about Yamkela and his life outside the orphanage, as well as offer him the opportunity of a lifetime to inspire orphans all around the world.
Oh, come, I want to show you something. I kept this all these years. Remember the guitar you used to play on under that tree across the road?
Sometimes I even dream about this place. This is where my roots are.
In order for Yamkela to make a living, he had to become a cleaner at the airport, leaving him hardly any time to practice his music and harness his talent.
It kills me knowing that I'm doing something that I'm not into, and there is something that I want to do that I really love, but I cannot do it.
In Yamkela, I see this deep need to want to express himself through the art form of music, yet he doesn't really have any tools to be able to do so.
So we decided to surprise Yamkela with a top-of-the-range professional acoustic guitar. But the best part is we're going to be enrolling Yamkela in one of the best music schools in South Africa and paying all his living expenses for the entire year.
I don't know what to say. Thank you so much.
All the music you've heard so far in this video has been made in collaboration with Yamkela.
And while they continue to make music, I want to tell you guys about our incredible long-term partner, the sponsor of this video, Electric E-Bikes. This orphanage build ended up costing a lot more than we thought it was going to, and Electric E-Bike stepped up to the plate by providing the additional funding to help us finish it. So if you don't know what electric e-bikes are and what they do, they're on a mission to change people's lives by increasing the mobility while being energy efficient. One example of them doing this is our last video where we gave away 1,000 e-bikes to people around the world, including Kenya, to help them more efficiently transport water. So do me a favor and click the link in the description below and purchase an electric e-bike from them, because by doing that, you'll help them make money so they can continue to support these projects. And it's a beautiful cycle I'd love to keep going. Thank you, Electric E-Bikes, for sponsoring the video. Let's get back to it. And we threw one final celebration for the orphanage by getting Yam Kala to perform a few of his original songs.
Baphumelele will continue doing what we are doing, saving lives. Thank you so much.
It is now time for Yam Kala to start his musical journey. We are so excited to see what he can do, and we will keep you constantly updated on his progress throughout the year.
See you in a year.
And I want to say a special thank you to Checker 6060 for sending motorbikes and a literal truck full of food to the orphanage. Thank you so much. And I also want to shout out Yum Yum, Sunbake, Rama, Dumor, and RCL Foods for also committing to feed the orphanage for an additional year. But despite everything we've done, Mama Rose and the orphans still need more help. So if you're able, click the link in the description or the donate button below this video and just give whatever you can. And just by watching these videos, you are literally changing lives. So thank you.
Now, when you want to get to that, that's what we're working towards. That's what we're working towards, Mr. Beast. And you know what's crazy about watching that video? And I'll be in real talk. I put out, and remember I told you, if you look back at Adriane Mays, I reached out to electric e-bikes in regards to sponsorship for the random virtual celebration of random acts of kindness. So you see how God is all aligning all this stuff? Like, do you see this miracle happen live? I didn't make this up. So again, the sponsors that are in Mr. Beast's video are some of the sponsors that I reached out to this past week in regards to the random acts of kindness virtual celebration. You know, I know how this algorithm works. And you know what feels great is when the algorithm works when you're on the same parallel with billionaires. So Mr. Beast is doing the things that CCC Because We Care Foundation, that Unica Games and I want to wake up and just give and make people and impact people's lives. And it's not the billionaire dream. It's not just for Adriane Mays to go live in Dubai and to live by myself on islands and have all the luxury and just go retire in this beautiful home, which is still nice. The whole idea is to build billionaire brands within. And so inspiring someone else. Mr. Beast just touched a whole village of impacting with what you can do with money. So there's different things, and understanding the Project 2025, the 900-page mandate for leadership. In this part 5, I appreciate everyone that has at least came in, checked in, and listened today. We're going to pick back up tomorrow in regards to the growth and the grinding, and consider being a sponsor of CCC Because We Care Foundation. Day 52 is when I said I was 18 years old with 34 years of experience. So we're going to see what this Curious George, open-eyed Adriane Mays, just ready to give and help people with all of the love and all of the tools that's all within here and within here and within here, as long as I keep going. I'm going to stop letting the past hold me back, but the future is so bright and beautiful and luxurious as long as I just allow it to happen. And I have to keep going. You can't just chill now. You have to put the work in. You have to consistently do the process. You cannot just watch TV and chill. It's not going to come like osmosis, unfortunately. But what you can do is take steps like listening to Project 2025, the 900-page mandate for leadership live, part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that can be found at Adriane Mays on that YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel. So thank you for tuning in today. Hopefully you got some value out of this video, and please don't hesitate to share, like, and subscribe with someone else. I'm coming back tomorrow with part 6. I'll get my throat back together. I understand people that can't sing now that sing. So I'm gonna come in bright and early and try to knock out some of it so I can get to the next phase of the process. I'm telling you, I want to follow up, call Electric Bites and let them know that literally see if they'll come on board for the Random Acts of Kindness virtual celebration. I just asked for 5 bites. Mr. Beast got 1,000 donated. So just starting the relationship and having Electric Bites be the official vehicle of CCC Because We Care Foundation. I mean, God is doing it, not me. I'm just in the midst of it. And I just love when things like this happen. You know what, Mr. Beast? One day we're going to meet. And even you could support my friend, CCC Because We Care Foundation, supporting each other. But I love what you're doing, the Random Acts of Kindness, and seriously, and supporting other entrepreneurs such like this. That's the goal. It's supporting one another and growing and building. And Mr. Beast he's doing his thing. So thank you so much for the opportunity to show people 17 million views he had for that fundraiser. He schooled hundreds of teachers, 17 million people that were able to tune in, 29 million people powering a mountain. I mean, this is the way that this is a fundraiser. And these fundraisers are changing lives. I mean, literally, let's take a quick look. 30 million people, 100 kids smile for the first time. Aww. These are the things that we want to actually.
I just literally can't believe that this platform even exists.
I love every
this is so great. Yes, I do lose Go High Level. But
single thing about High Level.
Go High Level is
Every year, over 200,000 children are born without the ability to smile and, even worse, breathe properly. 99% of people are born like this, with a full ability to breathe through their nasal airway passage. However, the other 1% look like this, with a cleft lip or palate, which makes life terribly difficult for these children as they grow up. In poorer areas, there is no way for many of these people to get healthcare, meaning thousands of them grow up without ever having an opportunity to receive surgery, which results in bullying and social isolation. But there is one organization that is making a big difference in communities all around the world. Meet Kathy.
40 years ago, my husband and I were asked to go to the Philippines. We landed in sites one after the next, and we saw 300 children with cleft lip and palates. We just didn't know what to do. We said, let's do what we can, and we were able to do 40. The rest we had to turn away. So we said to ourselves, okay, well, we should go back. We should at least finish.
This was the start of Operation Smile, and in 40 years, they've been able to achieve over 400,000 successful surgeries for patients in 36 countries all around the world. However, in Mexico, the number of cleft cases are quickly increasing and becoming difficult to maintain alone. They desperately need our help. So Darren and Dan flew to Puebla, Mexico, a city with rich Latin history.
Oh man, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Would you see the angle we're going to? Do you see how the wealth creation, the financial education, the travel experiences, the health and wellness, and AI marketing education is all culminating together with the digital franchise brands for CCC Because We Care Foundation? Look at Mr. Beast. That's where we're going. That's where we're going. Oh, I'm so excited. So come tune in tomorrow. Project 2025, 900-page mandate for leadership. I'm going to start out early. The first section will be in the morning. Probably try to get it done early in the morning, probably around 6, depending on how I wake up. And then from there, I'll take a break. I know I have my counseling service tomorrow at 9:30. So I want to get some hours in before then. So I'm at least get to it before, it's going to be at least before 7. So I'll see you guys in the morning. Adriane Mays, AI Genius, president of CCC Because We Care Foundation, bringing you Project 2025 900-page mandate for leadership live. And we're ending on page, let me make sure I say that for the video. Thank you so much for Mr. Beast doing all the things you do in this community. Seriously, thank you. So we're ending now on page 226. We'll pick up tomorrow with the President's Daily Brief. And on 259 out of 922, we're 28% done. And we have 72% to go. So we're going to get it done, and, sooner than later. And tomorrow I'm going to jump in. I'm not going to have as much free talk. We're going to talk. I'm going to go right in in the morning before my 9:30 counseling, and then we'll try to get it done. I got to get it done so I can go to the next part. I want to do the follow up. So I will, I must. Have a good night. Friday evening. Hopefully you enjoyed your time with Adriane Mays. Let's go.